Percy Jackson's 14th birthday.
Sorry, do you want to say 14th birthday like a human? Oh, we found the intro for the episode. What's good? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Newest Olympian. My name is Mike Schubert. I'm the titular Newest Olympian, and I'm a grown man who never read the Percy Jackson books as a kid, but I am now completing the first portion of a journey of me going through these books for the very first time to see if this is a book series that society has been sleeping on. I am here joined by a very special guest, someone who you've heard across the podcast multiple times, someone that I'm personally a huge fan of, and we are recording live, cramped up in our bedroom closet. Optimal recording situation. It's Kelly Schubert. Kelly, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm excited to have you for the final chapter of the final book of the main PJO series. We used to have a running thing where you would always come on for the last chapter, and then we did touring and you were on a million episodes, so we cooled the Kelly Jets a little bit. But now you are back here to discuss the last chapter of The Last Olympian.
Wow, I can't believe we've made it here.
We have made it here. For you, it's been years since you finished the book. For me, it has still been months because I did read this a while ago and then we stopped, and now I let more of the episodes come out. We're recording this one on November 1st. I let more of the episodes come out so that I could have more of a TNO overall experience thought process, because at one point I was like 6 months ahead of the podcast or something ridiculous. So it is nice to be in this situation where more of the episodes have come out. I've gotten a little bit of feedback on some of the things discussed or not discussed. And because this last chapter is really short, which I didn't realize, I wasn't anticipating like a 4-page chapter when I had scheduled, we'll do one episode over the final one. I wasn't planning for that, so the back half of this episode is going to be filled with questions that our patrons sent in. I asked what questions you would want Kelly to ask me. Kelly might have some of her own. But yeah, we'll cover chapter 23. We'll do some questions, and that will be the little bow on the PJO book episodes, and then we'll move on to the PJO spin-off stuff, such as the movie. I think I've asked you all of the guest questions at this point. No, I think one of the new ones that someone had suggested that I'm going to be using going forward that I haven't yet, I think someone posted this on the subreddit. The question is, what's your fatal flaw?
Oh.
I know. Deep.
In a job interview, I'd probably say,
I try too hard.
I'm a perfectionist and I try too hard. But actually, that was my feedback at my job for like 3 years running, was that I spent too much time on the details and it didn't need to be perfect. And I was like, so I am a perfectionist. I can claim that as my biggest flaw. What's your fatal flaw?
I think maybe like if tunnel vision, if that is a thing, like I'll get too focused on doing something a particular way and I'm not quick to abandon something. Like if I've done it one way and I like it, or I'm trying it one way, I would get too much caught up in trying to do it that way rather than be like, okay, fine, let's throw it aside.
I think it's that you're too cute.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll take that as well. I'll say that in a future job interview with myself.
I'm too cute.
Too cute. So this chapter is chapter 23, which is called We Say Goodbye, Sort of. And I very much enjoy what this actually means. My guess when I was doing this, when I was reading it for the first time, I always try to guess what happens in the chapters. I guessed that I think this was going to be just like a Percy's going to go back to Sally's but be on call situation, where it was like, oh yeah, I'm not at the camp, but like in case stuff goes down. And then book 1, Heroes of Olympus, it's like, hey, stuff's going down. What I also wrote in my notes is that I was hoping that Annabeth and Percy promised to see each other no matter what happens. And then I was wondering, where's Annabeth going to go to school? Does she still go to school? Can it be in New York? Will it be at the same school as Percy? They don't really answer any of these questions in this chapter. I don't know if it will be answered in Heroes of Olympus, so maybe we don't discuss it, but those were my thoughts at the very beginning of opening chapter 23. Indeed, trapdoor intact.
See, I thought that when we got to this point, I could just speak freely. But I know too much more.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's the Heroes of Olympus books. You haven't started Trials of Apollo yet. Now there's also the new ones. Like, it's going to be a forever situation of me not being able to have a full conversation. Maybe when I retire.
I suppose if I don't read Trials of Apollo until you get to them,
right,
then when you're done with Heroes of Olympus, we can talk freely.
That's true.
Because we'll be on the same page.
Yeah, that's true.
And then I'll just race ahead of you.
Look. That's a possibility.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see if you can hold off.
Yeah, we'll see how much time I have, how much willpower I have. We'll see. I'm currently rereading Heroes of Olympus because I read them so fast the first time. I really just forgot so much. So I'm in the middle of rereading I'm in the middle of rereading
I know it's called The Lost Hero. I know it's called The Lost Hero. You don't have to hide that from me. I don't know all the names, but I do know that the first one is The Lost Hero. And then I think one of them is called The House of Hades. And then I think another one is The Mark of Athena. But I have no idea what number or what order.
Do you not look at the books on our bookshelf?
I try not to.
Interesting, because they're like in your studio, like right in front of your face.
Well, I think I have them turned to where I can't see them.
Nope. They're just sitting right in front of your face, but you've never looked.
Well, I think those three names that I said are because they're in front of my face.
Yeah.
But my laptop is always in front of where I have the books.
That's
so I'm
true.
not actively looking. My brain is just hardwired to just not remember anything. I don't want any spoilers at all. And even sometimes people will be like, oh my gosh, whatever guest said something and it was a giveaway. Let me just tell you, everything goes over my head. I just try to like flush the information immediately. So I feel completely unspoiled with Heroes of Olympus. One of the Q&A questions that we'll do, I'm assuming, because I haven't really read over the patron ones in thorough detail because I want them to be a surprise. But I'm sure someone said, what do you think's going to happen in the next one? So we'll get into that. I'll make a bold prediction. So let's get into this chapter. Narrator Percy at the Jump informs us that camp ran for 2 weeks longer than normal this time around. He says that those extra weeks were the best 2 of his life, which I really appreciate. And I figure, yeah, life's got to be pretty sweet when you finally can start dating your crush and there's no looming threat of death potentially caused by you in terms of death of the world, but then also the looming threat of death of you by Kronos. Feel like that's got to be a huge weight off your shoulders.
Yeah, that would take a load off, I think.
Narrator Percy assures us that it's not only because of Annabeth. Grover is leading the satyrs on their mission to find half-bloods. The gods are keeping their promise, which is good to see that they can last at least 2 weeks. And demigods across the globe, not just in the United States, are showing up.
Interesting.
Which I find very interesting. And I would now think, and I wasn't necessarily thinking it before, but now I would think, ooh, international characters in the sequel series, perhaps, question mark, eyeball emoji, eyeball emoji, eyeball emoji.
I'm the face that's the eyeballs, but with no mouth.
Yeah, nice. Yes, I think that translated to the audio. Grover says the seeking satyrs are exhausted. He says that they need more funds for travel and could use about 100 more satyrs.
Are there any lady satyrs?
I don't think so.
How do they make new satyrs? Because when they get reincarnated, they get incarnated as nature. So if you need 100 more satyrs.
Are satyrs born? It might be one of those things where it's like, a god makes love. Satyrs, alongside nymphs, are nature spirits that were created when Ouranos' blood spilled on fertile soil after he was murdered by his son Kronos. In Greek mythology, they were minor gods of the forest. Like gods, they never die, but simply transform into a weaker state into a plant.
So eventually they'll all be gone?
I guess there's a finite source of satyrs?
Right. And so sending them all looking for Pan and them
now
all getting
demigods.
Eaten was a really big waste of resources there for a while.
I will ask Dr. Moya about this.
That's a lovely question. Because I was going to say, well, get busy, Grover, but I don't think he can.
Yeah, I mean, he has a crush.
Help the problem.
I guess he has things for nymphs, but do they have kids? Do they have demi-satyrs that are part nymph, part satyr? I'll ask Dr. Moya. But Percy says the ones that they do have are working hard, and he thinks that it is because they fear Grover. Grover thinks that's silly, but Percy reminds him that he is the Lord of the Wild and the chosen one of Pan and a member of the Council of Cloven Elders, so he's got his credentials. Grover tells him to stop, adding that Percy is as bad as Juniper. And of course, I was thinking, as bad as Juniper? Huh? No, I know it's not her, as much as I want it to be. Juniper wants Grover to do big things, such as run for president, which I don't know if that one's going to pan out for you, Grover, but I think there's better things. This was also written at a time where being the president was like a job that was praised. And now it's just like everyone's bad, and we've realized everyone's bad. I don't think there's ever been a good one. So our duo overlooks the construction of the new cabins. The U is becoming a completed rectangle, and all the demigods are helping out, quote, with gusto. And then I Googled, what is the origin of with gusto? You know, the phrase where it's like, oh yeah, he really did it with gusto.
I'm assuming it comes from a gust of wind.
Ah, I like that. To me, it just feels Italian. Haha! Gusto comes from the Italian noun gusto, meaning taste or flavor. From Latin, I should have known this. I took Latin in high school. From Latin, gustus, tasting flavor, sense of taste, which is also the source of French go, G-O-U with a caret on top, T, taste, flavor, relish. Gustus is a derivation from the verb gustare, to taste. Because, okay, this is just, why? I mean, I guess, like, to do something with gusto, like, oh, to do it with style, but I guess it has morphed. The term was used from the early 1600s to the beginning of the 1800s and became more popular with its main current meaning with great energy and enthusiasm. There is a thought, according to this blog, that it may have gained popularity with the Italian lyric opera in England, but I don't know. So I guess just like with flavor became like with emphasis or something. I don't know, but hooray for me being right for Italian.
This has been Etymology Corner with Mike Schubert.
So they are building the cabins with gusto. Nico has zombie builders for the Hades cabin, which is being furnished with obsidian walls, a skull on the door, and green fire torches that are eternally lit, which is incredible. And I'm so glad that this is finally here. I feel like there have been 12 times on the podcast where I've mentioned, please, can we get a Hades cabin in Camp Half-Blood? And now we finally have it, and the vibes are immaculate. Next to this cabin are ones for Iris, Nemesis, Hecate, and others that Percy doesn't recognize, which I think is a perfect way for Rick to leave intentionally blank for future storylines that he doesn't have to commit to right away.
Very smart.
Yeah. Narrator Percy says that new cabins are being added to the blueprint each day, so much so that Annabeth and Chiron are discussing adding a whole new wing of cabins, which I think is great for even more plot lines for Rick Riordan to discover. The Hermes cabin is less crowded, and new campers are consistently rolling in, led by satyrs and, of course, chased by monsters. Percy and Grover are talking, with Percy saying that Chiron told him the camp will be double the size next year. I still would love to know the exact numbers, because I still feel like I don't have an exact sense of how many total campers there are.
Well, a lot have died recently.
True.
But when they showed up at the base of the Empire State Building, didn't they say there were about 40 demigods, and that was minus the Ares cabin?
Yeah, correct. So maybe 50.
Would be my guess right now. But didn't it used to be like 100? Did they really lose half the people?
Well, they lost a lot of people in the Battle of the Labyrinth, and then they lost a chunk of people who joined Luke's side. So yeah, maybe at one time it was like 75 to 100 and then dropped down to 50.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, okay. But so I guess maybe now we're pushing back to 75 versus 100. I guess he means like twice as big as what it was last time, not necessarily twice as big as what it was at its peak.
That'd be nice, yeah.
That would be cool. We'll have to see.
What happened to all of the demigods that went to Kronos' side, but then didn't die in the battle?
I don't know.
Do they get thrown in like demigod prison and do like rehab programs to come back as demigods?
There is no mention of it so far. I'm guessing it doesn't come up in Heroes of Olympus, but
I don't know.
That is a good question.
It could be something I forgot.
That is true. Yeah, you've only been rereading the first one, so who knows? Grover agrees with Chiron, but he is convinced that it'll still be good old Camp Half-Blood and have the same vibes. Tyson and some Cyclopes are using stones to build the Hecate cabin, and it is a bit of a touchy job because each stone is enchanted, and each will either explode or turn nearby campers into trees if they are dropped.
Nice.
Yeah, narrator Percy about this says, quote, I figured nobody but Grover would like that. Grover alerts Percy that he may not be able to see him as much with all of the travel, aka, hey Percy, we got to make room for some new campers and new friends for you to make in Heroes of Olympus. And then Percy in reply says, quote, won't change anything. You're still my best friend, which is so sweet.
G-Man.
G-Man. G-Man smirks and says, except for Annabeth. And Percy responds, that's different. Grover does agree. And I kind of get that because I would consider you my best friend, but also the friendship that I have with you is different than the friendship that I have with someone like Johnny or Steven. So I can see Percy having the brain space of like, there's my best friend, and then there's, okay, you're scowling so hard at me that I feel like I should abandon this line of reasoning.
No, I guess you're right. It goes without saying that you are my best friend, but it doesn't encapsulate what you are.
Right.
So you're a different term, your husband.
Sure. And you call your sister Erin your best friend.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't try to refute like, well, aren't I your best friend? I'd be like, no, Erin is that same tier, but in a different way.
Yeah. But there's just no word for describing what you and I are, I think.
I think there is a word. It's called spouse.
Yes, but for some people that doesn't mean
that's true. Some people
your
just
best friend.
Yeah, that's true. Some people just marry for other reasons.
Well, it's just different for every person.
Sure. But yeah, you're the person I want to hang out with the most.
Yeah. You're the person who knows the most about me.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good. I was going to say, I do not know the most.
Yeah, and you know the most about Percy Jackson. So
I also don't know that.
Well, I don't know.
I forget that. Look, I've only read the books once. So I don't know the most. I forget things. Sometimes I forget things even in episodes. Like in a recent one, I was saying, is the blade really cursed? I thought that was a prophecy thing that was kind of like really going fast and loose with the definition of cursed blade. Mm-hmm. But then someone reminded me on the subreddit, they said, well, Luke swore on the blade that he would protect his family. And I totally forgot that he swore on the blade. I know he made that oath, but I completely forgot that it was on the blade. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, I forget stuff all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
It's okay.
But not about me.
No, never.
What's the word?
You're born on undisclosed birthday.
Yeah, what's the word for a person that thinks the same thoughts as you before you say them? That's what I would say you and I are.
We finish each other's sandwiches.
Sandwiches, yes.
You're my person.
I finally educated you on the etymology of that phrase.
Yeah.
And
it's from Grey's Anatomy, and it makes way more sense. I'm glad to know it's from that and not Ben H. and Lauren B. from The Bachelor.
It was stolen by the Bachelor girlies.
Mm-hmm.
And
guys.
And guys. It was stolen by The Bachelor and turned into something that does not mean the same thing. But in Grey's Anatomy, it was a really sweet moment.
I feel like now, anytime I hear someone say, I'm going to have to ask them what the inspiration was. Because before I knew the Grey's Anatomy thing, when I would go to people's weddings and there would be some sort of speech given and they said, you're my person, I would go, oh, God. Like I'd get so mad at my friends or their significant others. But now maybe they're just big Grey's Anatomy heads. And then
should I explain what in Grey's Anatomy it comes from?
Sure. But what I learned when I posted that picture of the guy who plays Poseidon in the movie is also Dr. Owen Hunt. Apparently everyone who listens to this podcast watches Grey's Anatomy.
Okay, never mind.
But
and
please explain. No. Explain it.
So Christina and Meredith are best friends, but this is early in their frienddom where they're still kind of establishing that relationship with each other. And Christina has to go to a clinic. She hasn't told anybody that she's pregnant. She's planning on getting an abortion. And she hasn't told anybody, and she feels uncomfortable about it. And she has told Meredith, but then told Meredith that she doesn't want to talk about it and she doesn't want to discuss it. And Meredith is like, well, why did you tell me then? Why did you even tell me if we can't talk about it? And she was like, you're my person. The clinic needed me to put down an emergency contact information, an emergency person, and you're my person. And so then it became you're my person. You're the person I call in an emergency. You're a person I call when I need help. You're a person I call when I'm happy or when I'm sad. And so they say that throughout the series, but it started as this like really deep connection where they didn't need to say more. It wasn't just like, this is a friendship. It was, you're my person. You're the one I rely on.
Yeah. I think the key difference is prolonged eye contact and very serious look. You're my person is different than you're my person. Anyway, Percy Jackson. That afternoon, Percy is taking one final walk along the beach when a familiar voice says, good day for fishing. So it's Poseidon. Narrator Percy notes that he is dressed in, quote, a real subtle pink and green Tommy Bahama shirt. Iconic, and I wonder if Tommy Bahama's PR department was very excited that they got the name drop of their brand in the books. Percy asks what's the occasion, and Poseidon winks, classic Poseidon, and says that he never got the chance to talk to Percy in private on Olympus, so he wanted to have a chat with him now. Percy is surprised that Poseidon wants to thank him since he's the one who saved the day. Poseidon admits that joining the fight caused his palace to be destroyed, but it can be rebuilt. He adds that so many of the gods wrote him thank you cards, even Ares, though he suspects Hera put him to it. I want to see these cards. It's so good. It's so good.
I'm imagining that Hermes had to deliver all of them and is a little pissed off now.
And well, if he made drachmas off of it, it's good for the Hermes delivery service. Poseidon had a fishing line cast this whole time, and he begins to catch a large sea serpent after delivering this line. He then lets the sea serpent go because it's too small for eating, and he says that the game wardens would be furious otherwise. Percy is flummoxed that one was too small since it was ginormous, and I just love this whole catch and release policy that Poseidon has to abide by.
I didn't know he ate sea serpents for breakfast.
Now we know. Does he say breakfast or
no,
just eating?
I was
Okay.
just saying.
Maybe it's one of those more normal lunch things, but I don't know. I've had sushi for breakfast before. I don't care. Poseidon grins and compliments Percy on a job well done with the new cabins. He ponders if he should claim all of his unclaimed children so that Percy can have some siblings next summer, and I think that's pretty good. Percy goes, ha ha, with a hyphen in between, which makes me feel like Percy is not thrilled or he thinks this is some kind of joke. But then Poseidon doesn't respond. All he does is reel in his fishing line. Percy then double checks, you were kidding, right? And Poseidon gives him an inside joke wink, which still doesn't let Percy know whether or not he was kidding. Which maybe this is Rick just thinking, let's get a Child of Poseidon in the sequel series. I don't know. I like that this whole chapter is just Rick keeps the door open for stuff.
Yeah, no, he's opening a lot of doors for himself.
Indeed. Poseidon then says, I'll see you soon, Percy. And remember, know which fish are big enough to land, Which I don't know what that means. Do you have any idea what he was getting at? What is he talking about? Know which fish are big enough to land?
I think he means don't get bogged down in the small problems.
Focus on the big stuff.
Know which problems deserve your attention.
Okay. I like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's pretty good.
That's some nice fatherly advice.
It is. He then dissolves into sea breeze and leaves his pole behind. That night is the bead ceremony. And speaking of the bead ceremony...
I was wondering if you were going to say this.
So it was timed perfectly to where when this episode releases, it should be live on the newestolympian.com/merch. We've made beads for the podcast. So
is this the first time you're telling people?
I've mentioned it, I believe, but this is the first time directly in the episode. I said it in the mid-roll break, and if you've been skipping the mid-roll breaks, look, I don't know what to tell you. They're super fun. I know there's some people who skip them, you do you, but you're missing out on some really good stuff. But we're doing beads, and I would like to do them for, I guess, like each segment of the show. So this is just from 5 notable jokes or recurring bits from the PJO book episodes of TNO. But we've got one bead with a pigeon on it, one bead with a hairbrush on it because I use a hairbrush, as does Rachel Elizabeth Dare, one with a trap door on it because of the guest trap door, one with a shield that says plot on it because Chiron is always defending the plot, and then one with a juniper tree on it because I was so suspicious of juniper. So I believe as long as there's no delays in any of the production, you can go to thenewestolympian.com/merch and get your beads now. They'll come with a little twine and everything so you can make a necklace, and the beads are nice wooden engraved beads. And if they're not live at thenewestolympian.com/merch right now, I'll probably talk about this in the mid-roll break where I have an update about when you can expect them to be live. But they should be live because that was the whole point of me working with my merch department so that when we were done with book episodes, you could go get the beads. Mm-hmm. So that night is the bead ceremony, and the Hephaestus cabin was in charge of this year's bead design. They pick the Empire State Building, and now I was thinking immediately, are the little symbols on the books the bead choices? I don't think so, but I feel like maybe in some iterations, because we've got the paperbacks and we have a nice set of hardcovers that my parents got for me for Christmas. Mm-hmm. And I feel like they have little emblems on them, but I don't think it's necessarily the bead designs. I also don't know exactly what Percy's beads are off the top of my head.
First one was a trident.
Yes.
The second one, was it the fleece?
Was it the fleece? That would make more sense. I feel like the things that I know on my books that have engraved things is like the eyeball for the Cyclops, and I feel like they wouldn't have put that on the bead. So yeah, I don't think it's the bead things on the books because I think the third one has Blackjack because Blackjack's on the cover, and I don't think that they made a Blackjack bead for the third one. What was the bead? I mean, does he have? What are Percy's beads? I can Google this and be safe, right?
You Googled the etymology of. Well, let me do it.
No, I'm always afraid. Like if I Google Percy's beads, they'll be like, "And here's of Olympus after Grover dies." You know.
The first bead has a trident on it.
Okay.
The second one is Thalia's pine tree.
Okay. That's
However,
definitely not what is on any of the books. So the books, at least the ones that I have, are not the bead designs. But continue, just so I know these beads.
Oh, this is like a how-to article on how to make your own.
Well, don't read that. Here's how you do it. You go to thenewestolympian.com/merch and you buy them.
Hold on.
Support me, a local business.
According to some sources, Percy never got a bead for his third-year quest.
Yeah,
for his third year
wondering.
because of his quest with Artemis's hunters. But I made one anyway, a bow and arrow to represent the hunters. So this person made a bow and arrow for the hunters, but that wasn't like the camp's like bead that year.
Because is book 3 completely not in the summer?
It's in the winter.
Right, yeah. It starts in December. Yeah.
Book 4 is the Labyrinth, and then book 5 is the Empire State Building.
Okay. So maybe close, but okay. So I feel like the only one that doesn't match the books is the second one, but I don't know. I'll have to see. Maybe, I know there's so many different iterations of the books. There's so many that I wouldn't be surprised if one has the bead designs.
Black bead with a turquoise trident for the Lightning Thief. Sea of Monsters features the golden fleece hanging from Thalia's pine tree. Titan's Curse. There is no bead from this quest for Artemis because it happens the same year as the Sea of Monsters, only a little after Percy Jackson's 14th birthday. Battle of the Labyrinth features an intricately designed maze to represent Daedalus's labyrinth. And the Last Olympian features the Empire State Building with the name of the campers who fell at the Battle of Manhattan.
Now, here's what's ridiculous to me. It does mention that it has the names of all the heroes who died defending Olympus. How the hell small are these names on this bead? Because I'm imagining very tiny. I know it's magic and they're in a Greek magical world, but how the heck are you getting such tiny little names on the bead?
Tiny little names on the bead.
Tiny little names on the bead.
Tiny little bead names.
Tiny little bead names. Hey, look, the tiny bit. It's Ethan Nakamura's on the bead. And, also, Michael Yu is on the bead. Leaf Ledger's not on the bead because he died in book 4. We were really sad about it. We were so crushed. Selena Beauregard's on the bead, but it says Sylvina Beauregard. Luke better not be on the damn bead, but I know he will be.
Stinky Luke. Stinky Gabe.
It's Smelly Gabe.
Darn it, Smelly Gabe.
He's not on the bead.
Anyway, I imagine that it is one name at a time. It's constantly revolving and changing.
So it's a magical bead.
It's a magical bead.
Okay.
I thought we knew that.
Well, they didn't say that. It says etched around it. Oh, but you think that there's like one space for a name and then it continues to rotate.
Yeah. I think that there's like it's like a rotating ring, and every time it moves, it's saying a different name.
Okay. Well, we'll see how they do it in the TV show. Narrator Percy says, there were too many names, but I was proud to wear the bead. So that might lend us to think all the names are on it.
Tiny little bead. Tiny little bead.
I mean, I do have, on my college ring, I have Shubes engraved on the inside, and it is kind of tiny. So if they had 40 people max, I guess like maybe not that many names. So they could have tiny little etchings on the bead.
Yeah.
And I guess the Empire State Building, because it is a vertical design, there would be a lot of blank space on the bead. So with all that blank space, they'll write their names. So Percy starts to feel... You didn't look happy enough at that Taylor Swift reference.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Blank space?
I didn't
write
hear
their
you.
names?
I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
Oh my
honestly, if I'm being honest, I got a text from my Taylor Swift group chat that I have with my friends, and I had to see if it was something important. Impeccable timing, though.
You're on the world's most popular Percy Jackson podcast right now. Come on, get in the game. Percy starts to feel like an old head since this is beat number 4. Chiron instructs the campers to never forget this summer, for they have discovered bravery, friendship, and courage while upholding the honor of the camp. He smiles at Percy, everyone cheers, and Percy notices Hestia in girl form tending the flames. She winks at Percy with her red eyes, and he realizes only he can see her. He thinks that she might prefer things to be that way. Chiron then tells everyone to go to bed early because unless they have other arrangements, they must leave their cabins by noon lest they be eaten by the harpies and, quote, end the summer on a sour note. Well, look, rules are rules, baby. We gotta follow them. So the next morning, Annabeth and Percy are at the top of Half-Blood Hill watching the buses and vans taking most of the camp back to the regular mortal world. Some older folks and newer folks are staying, but Percy is going back to Good Withany High School for his sophomore year, setting his new high score for consecutive years at a school at 2. Rachel
goody.
Rachel Elizabeth Dare wishes them goodbye, and she looks quite nervous while she leaves. She's sticking through with going to Clarion Ladies Academy Academy in New Hampshire. And man, oh man, does Mr. Dare suck. He is the true worst Mr. D. The fact that he actually made Rachel Elizabeth Dare go through with this sucks so much.
I forget, what was the deal she made?
If they left St. Thomas early to go and help,
Yeah.
she would go to Clarion Ladies Academy. Sorry, Clarion Ladies Academy. I always have to call her Rachel Elizabeth Dare full name, and I always have to call the school Clarion Ladies Academy. But I just was hoping that he might do a nice dad thing of like, you don't actually have to do it. But I was just being way too optimistic about Mr. Dare, the reason for climate change. Annabeth hugs Rachel Elizabeth Dare, hugs her, which I think is fantastic. And she says that she will do great. Narrator Percy informs us that she's been getting along swimmingly with Rachel Elizabeth Dare these days, which I really appreciate. Rachel Elizabeth Dare, still nervous, says that she hopes Annabeth is right. She's scared that someone might ask her a question about an upcoming test and she'll spout a prophecy with the answers. And she says, quote, "The Pythagorean theorem shall be problem 2. Gods, that would be embarrassing." Annabeth laughs, Rachel Elizabeth Dare smiles, and much like Kendrick Lamar, she's going to be all right. Rachel Elizabeth Dare tells Annabeth, ooh, big eye roll. Rachel Elizabeth Dare tells Annabeth and Percy to be good to each other, and she shoots a look at Percy when she says this. Percy is jokingly offended that he's labeled as the troublemaker type here, but before he can push back on it all, Rachel Elizabeth Dare wishes them well and runs down the hill to snag her ride. I'm very excited about what happens next. Annabeth is staying in New York City. She received permission from her parents to attend a boarding school in the city so she would be close to Olympus and oversee the rebuilding project. Now I need to know, how close to Goodwith High School is it? Is Percy going to be able to see her on a regular basis? What's the situation?
Everything in New York is 45 minutes apart from each other, so they'll be fine.
Yeah, as long as it's New York City. I don't remember if she clarified New York City or New York State.
I assume if she wants to be close to the Empire State Building, she'll also be close to, isn't Good
Within High School. Yeah, it's in like the upper...
lower west side.
No, I thought it was in the upper one of the sides. It's close enough to the Empire State Building.
Was that not the one that he went to that you said was across the street from... like the NSA building or something?
No, he calls the cab for... So that was the previous one where they did the dodgeball. He calls the cab for the Grey Sisters at the intersection where the NSA building is, which is the worst place to do it. But let's see. Where is Good High School, Percy Jackson? I feel like this should not give me any spoilers. When Grover dies at Good High School. Let's see. What's the address? Where is it located? I'm not sure where it is. Why do I feel like it was in the Upper East Side now? I feel like something about First Ave might have been mentioned.
When he was going to the
in the Sword of Hades? When he goes to the park?
Yeah.
Yeah. What park does he go to?
I don't remember. Carl Schurz Park.
Carl Schurz Park is in the Upper East Side. So I think Good Within High School is in the Upper East Side. So
close enough.
Yeah, she should be close enough if she's going to school near the Empire State Building.
Yeah.
So hopefully they're close, but I guess I will probably find out in the future series, but we will have to see. But I'm glad that she's at least in the New York area, not like San Francisco or something farther away. Percy asks if being close to him was a factor. Annabeth says he's got quite the ego, but then holds his hand to prove that it's a flirty insult. Percy gets deep, thinking back to her saying she wanted to build something important, and he wonders if they were off to a good start. Look at this metaphor from Percy Jackson.
Cute.
Annabeth can tell that Percy's been thinking about Rachel Elizabeth Dare's prophecy. Percy asks how could she tell. Annabeth says because she knows him. She then bumps him on the shoulder and reassures him by admitting she's been thinking about it too. She wonders who will make up the roster of the 7 half-bloods in Heroes of Olympus, especially with all the new people coming into camp next summer. And then I wrote in my notes, right, extra justification of new faces. The 7 people might be mostly new friends, I'm assuming aside from Percy and Annabeth. Percy agrees and adds that he's curious about the whole falling in storm of fire aspect of it. He's got his head in the right place, so I appreciate this. Annabeth is worried about that as well. Also, she's concerned about the doors of death part. She says she doesn't love it, and she hoped that they would get a bit of peace for once. Percy says that Camp Half-Blood wouldn't be Camp Half-Blood without danger, and Annabeth admits that he is right, but she still has hope that the prophecy won't take place for a few years. Ha ha, ha ha ha, unless there is a time jump between this book and the first book of Heroes of Olympus. I don't necessarily see that happening because it's going to happen in the first book, but maybe there are a few years in between. Who's to say? Yep. Silence from Kelly. Trapdoor intact. Percy says that it could end up just being a problem for future generations of demigods, and they can just chill in the meantime. To that, I let out a hearty ha 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 ha.
Ha ha ha.
Annabeth nods, but she doesn't look confident, which is correct. Percy thinks, you're probably right, but he's having a hard time getting too stressed out on a nice day next to her, knowing that this goodbye wouldn't truly be goodbye. And this is the titular sort of, which I think is great. Like, it makes sense for this whole book series, like when you're looking at it in a meta perspective, like take yourself out of it. This is Rick saying goodbye, sort of, because at this point he knows full well he probably already has a contract with Disney Hyperion at this point to write more books. So he knows we're not done here. It's only just beginning. And that's what I would say to everyone listening to the podcast. It's only just begun. Percy challenges her to a race to the road. Annabeth says, "You are so going to lose," and takes off. Percy chases after her and, quote, "For once, I didn't look back." Yes. And that's the end of chapter 23. And that's the end of The Last Olympian. That's the end of this episode for now. We're going to take a break for our final The Cached Olympian. But then when we come back, Q&A. It's lots of fun stuff. What's ahead? Whee! Hello, Patreon, and welcome to The Cached Olympian, the final Cached Olympian. This one is Seattle edition. I'm on the road. I was doing an improv show with my old improv troupe, a tribe called Yes, up in Bellingham, Washington, which is very fun. And now I am finishing up the episode here back in Seattle. So here we are for the final Cached Olympian. Let's talk about what's going on with the show. So as mentioned in the episode, we should have the beads live. I said in the recording that I would have an update if they are not live. As of me recording this on Sunday, November 12th, I believe that they will be live at some point during the day on November 13th if you go to thenewestlympian.com/merch. And if not, I will figure out what's going on and I'll post something on social media, Instagram and Twitter about it. But I talked to the merch company a couple days ago and they said things should be good. They usually update it at like 10 a.m. Mountain Time, which is where they're based. So if you're listening to this sometime after that, they should be there. And if they're not, I'll figure out what's going on. Other thing I want to update you on is the schedule. So later in this episode, Kelly will ask me in the Q&A, what are you going to do about covering the TV show, especially with the strike and all of that? Well, in between recording this episode and posting this episode, the SAG-AFTRA strike was resolved and they agreed on a new 3-year contract, which I'm very excited about. I'm very thankful and appreciative and proud and excited for all of the folks involved in that were able to work together to find a fair deal. I love people getting paid what they deserve. I'm happy for everyone involved. I'm happy for people who are involved in the Disney Plus Percy Jackson show, like the kids who now get to be a part of press tours and stuff. It's very cool. But what that also means is that I will be making episodes about the Percy Jackson TV show as it is coming out. So basically, every time an episode comes out, I believe the plan is for them to release on Wednesdays. The following Monday, I will have an episode of the Newest Olympian about the previous episode. So Wednesday, a couple days later, Monday, boom, you got a TNO episode about whichever episode of the TV show just released. So what that means in the interim is that this episode is coming out on November 13th. Then we're going to have 3 episodes about the Lightning Thief movie. So 2 about the actual movie itself. Those were the live shows we did in Philly and New York. And then 1 episode just about all of the stuff surrounding the film, like the Uncle Rick emails to Chris Columbus and all of that. Then we will do the mythology episode with Dr. Moya about The Last Olympian. Then we will take an off week. And then after that, we will get into the TV show episodes. That first TV show TNO episode will drop on Monday, December 25th. Merry Christmas. We're talking about the Percy Jackson show. If you want to double check this, and if you always want to know what we are doing on the show, you can go to thenewestolympian.com/about, and that always has what is slated for the next 4 weeks ahead. Now, if you go to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon, you can support the show, and we are going to have extra things coming up on the Patreon when the TV show comes around, probably some extra content more than what is in the episode, because I'm going to want to just ramble with whatever guest I have. But I want to give a shout out to the folks who have joined the Patreon recently. Shout out to all the folks who have ever supported at any point in time. But we are almost done with our backlog. I believe the next time I do a patron thing, it won't have to be the 50 cap anymore. But here are 50 more people who have joined the Patreon recently. Shout out to our newest Ultra God tier patrons, Mrs. O'Leary is Best Doggo and Bradimus Prime, 2 fantastic names. Shout out to our newest Mega God tier patron, Amanda Robson. Shout out to our newest Super God tier patrons, Brooke, PJO to Gay Pipeline, Alyssa Schneiman, and Who is Jason. Shout out to our newest God tier patrons, patrons Onyx Jackson, Tian O'Pigeon, Raphael Haig, Sam Kruger, Tale of Two Percys, The Huynh Dynasty, Adoring Fans with Exquisite Taste, Aonox, and Spencer D. And shout out to our newest demigod tier patrons Beth Ann, Otto Wood, Brenna Nabred, Pro Pidgey Podcast in all caps, Afield, Stacey Valamont, Estee Green, Sophie Kimla, Naomi, E. Desco, Isla Costigan, Danielle Foster, Phoebe, Scout the Mysterious Doggo, Nina, Jamadax, All the Homies Hate Luke, Amber Gaffney, Charlene Hitchens, Jenna Bro, Anna, Mariana Martin, Ghost Pigeon Coo, Palma Dessa Family, Rail Love Jael, Selena Erin, Emma Cowley, Aiden A, Noah Graves, Victoria Bajorek, Sarah, Alex Gabby, Raina is Queen, Emily Foster, What a Superbly Featured Room and What Excellent Boiled Potatoes, and Disaster Hippo. Thank you all so much for your support. May Kronos bless you that you never have your watch set to the wrong time zone, whether you're traveling or daylight savings happens, whatever's going on, just all your clocks are set to the right time. Now, if you're all caught up on the Newest Olympian and you're looking for a new podcast to listen to, I make a whole bunch of podcasts. I think you would like some of these other podcasts, and one that I think you would really enjoy, and now's a great time to listen to it, is Meddling Adults. Meddling Adults is a game show podcast for charity that I host, where guests compete to solve children's mysteries, and they do so for charity. They solve mysteries from classics like Scooby-Doo and Encyclopedia Brown, and whoever is the most correct earns money for a charity of their choosing. Season 4 is just wrapping up right now. In 2 days from this episode releasing, we will have the Season 4 finale, so that's been a whole fun time getting those next crop of episodes out. They've been delightful, and you can listen to those episodes as well as every episode we've ever made at meddlingadults.com, or you can just search for Meddling Adults in whatever podcasting app you're using, such as this one that you're using right now to listen to this. And before I wrap up here, you're going to hear words from a few sponsors make it feasible for me to be a full-time podcaster. Some of these ads will be read by me, and others of them won't. The ones that are not read by me are inserted locally. So if you live in Washington, don't be surprised if you hear an ad for one of those lamps that helps fight the gray that is Seattle in the fall and winter. Maybe you're going to get one of those. Who's to say? But once those ads are complete, we'll get back to this episode of the Newest Olympian. This episode of the Newest Olympian is brought to you by G Adventures. Let's say hypothetically that you are me, Mike Schubert, and you just completed a 2+ year run of making episodes of a podcast about the main 5 Percy Jackson books, and you want to celebrate with some sort of trip, but you're not really sure what you want to do, and you want to travel in a group. What could you do? You could use G Adventures. G Adventures offers over 600 small group trips around the world, and they've got trips of different travel styles, whether you are looking for something more active or more relaxing, and they are focused on community tourism. Now, this is a great time to check out G Adventures because currently they have a cyber sale going on. Until November 30th, 2023, you can save up to 30% on a huge collection of some of their most adventure-packed tours, all that leave before April 30th, 2024. And if you want to travel a little later than that, that's okay, because you can save 10% on select adventures that leave between May 1st and June 30th of 2024. So if you want to get all of those savings, you can go to gadventures.com/cyber-sale. That's G Adventures, G like the letter, adventures like the word adventures.com/cyber-sale. And you can get those savings and take a celebratory trip if you're an independent podcast boy who just finished making a whole bunch of podcast episodes about some really good books. You can take this little trip before you go covering all the other stuff that you got to cover today. And we are back. Kelly, are you ready to ask me some questions and stuff for the final 20-ish minutes of this podcast?
I'm ready and stuff.
Cool. Thank you to everyone on the Patreon who submitted questions. Basically, I put up a thing saying, hey, what questions do you want Kelly to ask me? We need to fill out the rest of the episode. And then a bunch of people did. So yeah, if you join the Patreon at any tier, every now and then I will put up these kind of general poll things. Patrons in the past have helped choose what designs were going to be on the beads that we talked about earlier in this episode. Stuff like that. So join the Patreon at any tier and you can help shape the show.
Well, the first 2 questions are from me.
Oh, good. Perfect. I would have done that if I was asking the questions. I always answer your questions first at the live shows when you send them in.
First off, is this indeed a book series society has been sleeping on?
Yes.
Oh, good. Glad that we've clarified.
100%. 100%. I really hope that the Disney Plus series puts it more on the map. But yes, I think society has been sleeping on it. I think I've come across more people than I would have expected, at least from my age and older, who have read the books. I was thinking when I first started this that it was going to be harder to get people on the show, but more and more folks have read them. But I still think overall it has been slept on because I read the Harry Potter books or Potterless, and now I read these. I liked these so much more. Like, at the very least, this should be as popular. And I really think it's just because the lack of successful film franchise So hopefully the Disney Plus show can correct that.
Second question, also from me.
Mm-hmm.
It was never hard for me to not spoil any plot to you because I did not want to spoil plot to you. I didn't want you to know anything. I had my people that I texted when cool things happened and I kept you out of it. But there was one thing that I begged you to let me tell you early. Do you know what it was?
Yeah, it was Burger Joint.
It was when they went to Burger Joint.
Yeah, I love when they went to Burger Joint.
So cool. You did not let me tell you.
I'm so glad I didn't because I think that was genuinely the most pleasantly surprised I was. I think one of the questions that I sent to you from the Patreon was, what was your favorite plot twist? And them going to Burger Joint is my answer. So I'm so glad that I didn't know.
I know. And the thing was, I had the exact same feeling when I found out, but none of my friends that I could text would understand that feeling except for you because we love that place.
The place is awesome.
Oh, it's so great.
Yeah, it's really good.
Okay, on to some more questions. What chapter title has been your favorite over the course of the series?
Supreme Lord of the Bathroom. Next question.
Naturally.
Do you have a favorite off the top of your head or no?
Not off the top of my head,
yeah.
no.
But no, Supreme Lord of the Bathroom is
It's a good
clear
one.
winner.
It's a good one. Is there anything from PJO that feels unresolved that you hope will be further developed in the sequel series? We can also pair this with another question. Now that you finished the original series, what do you hypothesize the Heroes of Olympus series will be about, and do you think it can top the original?
So as far as things that feel incomplete, I think the only thing is Clarice's arc. Like if it keeps going and she eventually comes to a point where she becomes Percy's friend, that would be really cool. But I think that is like the big disappointment for me. I know that it's a whole Achilles allegory or whatever, but she wasn't an Achilles allegory for the first 4 books. So to make her an Achilles allegory for the 5th book, I thought was whack and I didn't like it. So I'm hoping that we get more Clarice development in the sequel series. As far as what I think it's about, I'm not really sure. Let me pull up the prophecy.
Let me pull up the prophecy.
Okay.
7 half-bloods shall answer the call. To storm or fire the world must fall. An oath to keep with the final breath, and foes bear arms to the doors of death.
Yeah, 7 half-bloods. I think we're going to get 5 new friends in addition to Percy and Annabeth because I don't think Thalia is going to be one of them. Like any of the main people. Like Grover's going to be mostly gone. Tyson might be around, but I don't know that he qualifies as half-blood. And then Thalia is going to be doing hunter stuff. So I feel like it's going to be Percy, Annabeth, and 5 new friends. Storm or fire, the world must fall. I wonder if there's going to be like 2 sides. I don't know who would be fighting, but maybe one. But the world must fall. Must fall. Storm or fire, the world must fall feels like there's 2 people, like entities or whatever. And like one side is Team Storm and one side is Team Fire. An oath to keep with a final breath feels like there's going to be some sort of promise that does involve like someone dying. So like they have to, I don't know if it's like a sacrifice thing or whatever. And foes bear arms to the doors of death. That feels like people breaking into the underworld to try and do something. So maybe there's an evil group, whether it's the Titans or someone else, trying to take over the underworld and they have to like defend the House of Hades, which I know is one of the book titles. So that would be my thought. I really don't know. As far as do I think it can top it? I feel like I know a lot of people who say, don't tell anybody, but I like Heroes of Olympus better. Like, I feel like that is the overarching sort of vibe that I've gotten. I feel like it's going to be the same brain space for me when I think about Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3, where like Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3 are better films than Toy Story 1, but they can't exist without the perfection that is Toy Story 1. So it's hard for me to like pick liking either of those more than the first one. It's one of those like, you couldn't have had this without this. So I feel like it'll just operate in that brain space where I like them and I appreciate them, but I'm not going to draw comparisons. I'm just going to look at it all as just like, yeah, it's just kind of like book 6 kind of thing.
Next question. So apparently Percy was born in 1993 and the plot you're covering right now takes place in 2009. Which embarrassing or possibly really cool style choices do you think the main trio plus Tyson and Thalia participated in the 90s and early 2000s?
Well, was hacky sack mentioned? Feels like Grover would enjoy hacky sacking just because he had a Rasta cap.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like exactly almost my age because I was born in 92. So
I feel like Percy had some spiked up hair, frosted tips, main character energy going on.
Could do that. Yeah. I mean, you would be more of a sense of what kids that age liked as ladies.
Did you not see any girls during your time in the 90s?
But I'm not
and
like
early
super
2000s?
keyed in. But like, I don't know. Do you want to talk about like jelly shoes?
Oh,
and
yeah, jelly shoes.
gel pens.
Small sunglasses.
Oh, gosh. I feel like slap bracelets would have been fun. Like, come on, as a kid, who doesn't love a good slap bracelet?
Oh, yeah.
Pogs, Legos. I mean, definitely Thalia would have been all in for the Hot Topic kind of stuff. Like, she would have had Boys Are Stupid, Throw Rocks at Them shirts and like the Happy Bunny shirts and My Chemical Romance stuff. Like, she would have been all in on that.
I always feel like she was like Avril Lavigne.
Yeah. I feel like Tyson would have had all the cool games from back then, like Elefun and Mousetrap and...
Did you ever play Don't Wake Daddy?
Oh, gosh, yeah. And I still have trauma from it. So I feel like Tyson would just had all those cool games. Skip It. He would have that.
Oh, yeah. Skip It. Pogo sticks.
Yes. So I feel like Tyson would have all the cool, like, moon shoes, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Sock and boppers. He would have all the things that they had commercials.
Sock and boppers.
They were like inflatable, like boxing glove kind of things that you would like punch people with and they wouldn't hurt that much. All the things that like I would see on commercials when I was a kid watching Nickelodeon or whatever. And I would always try to get my parents to buy them. They'd be like, no. Very smart of them. Like we would get the occasional cool thing, but they would like weed it out and make sure we really wanted them and we were going to use them, which was the correct call. So yeah, I think there's so many choices. There's so many choices. But I would say like Annabeth was probably super duper big into Legos, Lincoln Logs, Connects, all that kind of stuff.
Next question. What bit of Greek mythology did you most enjoy learning about from the series?
I would say the Titans, because I knew enough stuff about the gods and some of their children from Hades the video game, but the Titans don't really get mentioned a whole heck of a lot. So learning the origins of people like Kronos and then meeting other people like Prometheus, I think that was very interesting because I didn't really know anything about the Titans except for, according to Denzel Washington, I need to remember them. So I would say that. And I'm excited because in Hades the video game 2, I believe your character Melano, who was in the Demigod Files, she wants to defeat Kronos. So
Ooh, interesting.
Maybe we'll get some more Titan action in Hades the video game 2. And now I will be prepared when they show up. I'll already know some stuff.
Exactly. Do you have a favorite Persassy Zinger comeback or roast?
I have a very favorite funny moment. I don't know. I would have to look up like all the different comebacks, but I do really appreciate when he's talking to Annabeth and Annabeth says, my fatal flaw, that's what the sirens showed me. My fatal flaw is hubris. And Percy goes, the brown stuff they spread on veggie sandwiches? And then she goes, no, seaweed brain, that's hummus. Hubris is worse. And he goes, what could be worse than hummus? Just completely out of pocket, just hummus catching strays. I just thought that was so funny. I feel like there's probably better insults that I enjoyed, and I would have to just like go through the transcripts of the Newest Olympian and just control F for comeback or zinger or whatever. But I really did enjoy hummus catching a stray.
Which god or goddess would claim ASMR Mike as their child?
I would feel like Artemis, because by being the goddess of the hunt and the moon, you get the mix of like nature sounds, but then also like when you're hunting, you need to be really quiet. And when I do ASMR, Mike, I'm doing very quiet things. So I would say Artemis because of the art of not making noise or making soft noises. And if people don't know what ASMR Mike is, that means you don't listen to the credits. And look, also fun stuff there. We end every episode with ASMR Mike, and it's always a good time.
Which mythical foe did you find the most intriguing? So not a main villain, but like Krusty or Campe or the Sphinx, etc.
Ooh. Do you have an answer for this one?
I thought Campe was a really interesting villain. I liked that one. It was fun. Liked Kelly with an I, even though she gave us Kelly as a bad name.
Yeah. That is fun with the whole cheerleader bit. I think that's pretty fun. I did really enjoy Melano in the Demigod Files, Melanoe or however you say it. I'll have to wait until Hades the video game says it, and then I just will mimic whatever pronunciation they use. But I thought she was very fascinating. I was already kind of interested because I knew she was going to be the main character of that game. And obviously she'll be someone you root for when you play the game. So for her to be so dastardly and evil in the Demigod Files made me very intrigued. So I think I'd pick her.
Okay.
Also, her powers are super cool.
Yeah. How do you feel you would do at a night of Greek mythology trivia, especially compared to how you would have done before reading the books?
I feel like I would do better than before, but I still don't feel like I would do great because if you're going to Greek mythology trivia, I feel like it's not going to be your base level knowledge. I feel like it's going to be the hyper specific questions, but I now know more details about some of the classic stories like Icarus and stuff like that. Whereas, going into it, I was like, yeah, Icarus, fly too close to the sun thing. But now I would know things like, oh, well, King Minos was the person in that story. Like, I feel like I could help with some of that if I was on a trivia team, but I don't think I'd be pulling my weight as far as like a true mythological nerd.
I think you would do okay because you would get Dr. Moya on your team.
That's true. Yeah, I would just assemble the super friends.
Yeah.
And
you know who to ask to be on the team.
That's a key point of trivia is knowing who to invite to be on your team. And then I get to be the hip hop and sports guy.
Also, which of the gods' children would you want to read about the most in the sequel series?
If we have Children of Nike, that would be cool because then we would have Children of Victory. And I don't know if they would just be like super athletes. I also would be intrigued to know more about the children of Hebe because I keep forgetting what Hebe is actually the goddess of because there was one TNO listener who made a joke that it was Hebe, the goddess of Jeebies. And that's all I can remember.
I just want to know... This is from another... this is not me saying.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
reading the quote. I just want to know what your reaction was to Percabeth finally kissing and officially getting together. I can only imagine. I squealed the first time I read it, and I was 24.
Well, at this point, you've probably already heard it because thankfully I do make a podcast about the books. So I talk about that part. I didn't skip that one. But when I read it, I was really happy. I don't think I was as hype about it as when they first kiss in book 4 because that was more surprising. But because I knew and I could really tell they were going to get together and because they were in the sequel series, like I knew it was coming at some point, not necessarily in this way. So the way it happened was really cool, but it wasn't like a super surprising, oh my goodness kind of thing. I did think it was super duper cute though with the whole underwater sphere thing. So yeah, I liked it a lot, but I still think I have more appreciation for the first kiss because I was so surprised by it. Remember we were on the subway and I started shaking your leg when I read that.
If you had to do an elevator pitch for PJO, which aspects of the series would you hype up to an 8-year-old versus a 30-year-old versus a 60-year-old?
8-year-old, I would hype up just how cool the story is and how fun the adventures are, talking about the gods and the powers and the magical items and traveling across the US. I would just try to talk about from an adventure perspective how cool it is. For a 30-year-old, I would probably talk about how they're really funny and you can get appreciation for younger you or like what it's like to be a teenager, but then also older you, like if you are starting to think about parenting and stuff, like if you find a love for Sally Jackson, they can be the inspiration for what it would like to be either if you're a parent or an uncle or an aunt or whatever, because I do find them as good motivators as well. And then for someone in their 60s, I would probably just try to pitch them being just like a fun, easy read because I feel like, at least with some of the people in my life, family members and family friends who are older, they love a good beach read and stuff. And I'm a big proponent of just read a YA book as a beach read. Like don't read murder, murder, murder or romance, romance, romance as beach read. Like you as an adult can just plow through a YA book and have a wonderful time and read a heartfelt story that's funny and usually some sort of suspense is going on in it. And sometimes there's romance too. I would just pitch it as like a nice, quick, wholesome, upbeat read.
That was actually going to be my pitch for a 30-year-old because that was one of my favorite things is that it is a quick and light read when a lot of what the other things I read are more dense.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's just an easily understandable book, which can be a selling point when everything else you read is so much more to parse through.
Yeah, they can be a good palate cleanser in between sad book or sad memoir or historically accurate book, nonfiction book, that kind of thing.
Right. Even books that I enjoy, like Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, those are really fun books that I enjoy.
But you got to pay attention to names.
You got to pay attention. You can't forget what's going on. You got to think real hard about it.
Right.
So this is kind of in a contrast to that, a really fun story, but is also a very quick story.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I was thinking that too for people in their 30s. And I said this is on the Patreon as a bonus episode, but I gave a talk at a library in New Jersey, and the whole pitch was old adults reading young adults books. And I was saying, like, look, if you just want something to breeze through and have a good time while doing it, here you go. It's also nice, even in my 30s, to read a book where Percy learns life lessons, because even me reading this, I'm like, oh yeah, I could be a little bit nicer to people and stuff like that. And I also, if someone was a parent or they were an uncle and they had a niece, nephew, whatever, like someone in their life of the age of reading it, like if you're in your 30s and there's someone 10 or whatever, I would be such a proponent of both of you reading it. That's something I think is so cool. Like if you're a parent, read the same books your kid is reading, because then you can like talk about it. I just think it would be so fun and fascinating just to be at the dinner table and be like, can you believe that Percy and Annabeth kissed? And then your teenage daughter is like, I know, wow, yay.
I mean, that was how I grew up with Harry Potter. It started out with my mom reading it to us at night.
And then would you talk about it and stuff?
Well, she would read a chapter as we were going to sleep. And so we were experiencing it together and talking about it as we were reading it. As we got older, we started to read the books ourselves, but that's how we first started experiencing them.
Yeah, that's super cool. I think that's fantastic.
What is your take on Percy's decision to not become immortal and instead ask for a systemic change, and if they'll actually stick to it? Especially in light of Harry Potter deciding to essentially become a wizard cop. This is and was a hot topic in the fandoms, and would love to hear your perspective.
I love that he did this. It shows that he is selfless. I feel like the gods will keep it up, but I wouldn't be surprised if it comes back into play in the Heroes of Olympus books, but maybe it's like some big problem is happening and then they aren't able to pay as much attention as they need to. I feel like that's not going to be like the overarching plot, because we've kind of already done that in the first series. So I hope the gods stick to it. I do really like this decision, and I think it is way better for him to do this than the Harry Potter thing. I didn't really think about this until I copy pasted this question into the notes document we're using, but Harry becoming a wizard cop not only sucks because him becoming a cop, but he's working for the government agency that was actively terrible to him for years and that he actively fought against for years. And then he's like, yeah, I'd love to work for you guys. So it really does suck. I appreciate Percy being given a similar offer and him saying, no, thank you. I'd rather wish for you all to be better, and I'm going to do my own thing. I like that a lot.
Which character did you change your opinion of the most from beginning to end?
Zoe Nightshade. I absolutely hated her when she came on, and then by the end you absolutely love her. That is the point of Zoe Nightshade, so it's incredible writing from Rick. But yeah, I mean, she comes in and I was not a fan, and then by the end I was sad when she died. So yeah. I think that's the biggest 180 for me.
Last question. What drink do you think Hera, Amphitrite, and Persephone toasted with when the Pact of the Big Three was made?
That's a very good question. Amphitrite, as ocean person, my picture in my brain of the ideal ocean drink is a pina colada. So I think she's having a pina colada.
Okay.
Hera, I mean, she sucks so much in this series. So I will pick a drink that I think sucks the most, vodka martini.
Okay.
And then Persephone.
Pomegranate wine.
Oh, yeah. Good call. Very good call. Very good call. Cool. Well, thank you, Kelly, for guesting. Thank you, listeners, for listening. Thank you, patrons, for submitting these questions. And thank you, everyone, for being along for the ride for these book episodes of the main series of The Newest Olympian. We are done. We are closing the first chapter, but we are not done with Lightning Thief stuff. I believe the next episodes will be the ones about the first movie, talking with Dr. Moy about when we're going to do our myth episodes, if there's a lot to discuss. And then depending on whether or not the SAG-AFTRA strike is still going on while the TV show releases, if that strike is resolved, I will make episodes of the podcast right after the episodes of the TV show go live. So that following Monday, I would talk about whatever released in the previous week. But if the strike is still going on, out of solidarity, I won't be making episodes. Instead, I'll cover some of the other Lightning Thief spin-off stuff, such as the musical. Then we could get onto the Sea of Monsters movie. There's some other spin-off books still to cover. So there's lots of other stuff to do before we move on to Heroes of Olympus. And we'll just have to see about how the timing shakes out. I will be asking the Olympic Court as well what order they want to do those in. So if you're at the highest tier of Patreon, you can help us pick what order we cover those spin-offy things.
If the strike isn't resolved, will you do episodes about the series once it is resolved?
Yeah. So whenever that finishes, then I will make the episodes about it, whether that's the middle of the TV show's run or if it's like March or whatever. Basically, once the strike is done and the TV show is up, there's like 2 conditions for making the episodes. TV show exists, strike over. When both conditions are met, I will make episodes of the Newest Olympian about the TV show.
For many reasons. I hope for the strike to end.
Yes, many reasons.
Yeah.
And then I guess I can do some Patreon exclusive stuff if the strike is still going on and the TV show is live. But I just don't want to make public episodes about it because I want to be in solidarity. And I don't want it to be seen as me promoting the TV show, even though I'm not a member of SAG. Who's to say I won't be a member someday? And then also, yeah, I'm just pro people getting paid what they're worth.
Yeah.
Not billionaires making more money.
Clarity on Ladies Academy.
Clarity on Ladies Academy. Well, anyway, thank you all so much for listening. Kelly, thank you for joining. And until we cross paths again when I start covering the movie and then the other stuff, until then.
You mean until next week?
Well, yeah. But it's when I'm doing that stuff. Until next week. Way to make it sound less cool.
Oh, sorry.
Until next week, I'll see you later. Hey there! Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Newest Olympian. This podcast is created, hosted, and produced by me, Mike Schubert. I also run the social media and the website. Our editor is Sherry Guo. The music is by Bettina Campamanes and Brandon Grugel, and the art is by Jessica E. Boyd. If you want to be a part of the show's community, you can find us on social media. We're at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. There's also a subreddit, reddit.com/r/The Newest Olympian. And then there's also the Discord that you get access to by joining any tier of the Patreon over at thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. If you want to get some TNO merch, you can go to thenewestolympian.com/merch. And if you want to support the show, and as a thank you, get access to a whole bunch of bonus content, you can do that at thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. Speaking of that Patreon, let's give a shout out to our producer level patrons: Kelsey Gillespie, The Damn Steam Nuggets, Vicky Garcia, Ellie Hoskovchova, Veronica Bartova, Haley Hastings, Robin Garcia, Frida Vikstrom, Megan Moon, Craig McRoberts, Taylor Payne, Giselle Salvador, Peter Johnson the Twin, Sabrina Balsiger, Boney Pony, Casey Williams, Polly Burge, Nikki Harris, Tatiana Schmidt, Sandra Rose, Josh Sayre, Josh Wilkie, Abby Ryan, Wise Girl, Ashton Gabrielson, Marco Redhouse, Caden Max, Sam Reeby, Riley Kiddes, Mary Kelly, Audra, Mrs. O'Leary, Rodith Kalna, Milo Kim, Harlan Christ, CC Reeds 23, Sandkoff, Julia Kendall, Emil Oskar Thomason, Liz Cardigan, Sarah Neal, Ricky, John Drielsma, Rayla Matthews, Riley Draken, Lunica Dune, Sky Mallory, Elizabeth Obermiller, Aidan Parziani, Biggest Tyson Fan, Hunter Landstrom, Captain Jack Rackham, Sky Captain and the Princess, King Bastion, One Damn Distraction coming up, Ethan Robinson, Ginger Spursboy, Joshua Aid, A Cup of Solace, Meg Roy, Lux, Neil, Will Buchanan,
Olivia Krenicki, Mrs. O'Leary is Best Doggo, and Bradimus Prime.
If you want to support the show in a non-monetary way, simply talking about the show is so helpful. Word of mouth is huge. So you can tell someone that you know who loves Percy Jackson about the podcast, or you can talk to someone who's looking for an excuse to finally get into the Percy Jackson books about it, or someone who's maybe getting hyped for the TV show that's coming up and they want to understand what's going on. Or you could post about the show on social media, or you could leave us a rating and review on whatever podcasting app you're using. All of these things really do help. I'm very appreciative to everyone who has already done so and to anyone who will do so in the future.
But I'm just so thankful that you tuned into this episode, and I hope you tuned into our next episode where we'll be covering the first half of the Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief movie. My goodness gracious, live in Philadelphia with Adam Amawala and Stephen Parra. But until then, I'll see you later. Hey everyone, how's it going? It's me, ASMR Mike. So I'm actually recording this one from Nathan Cox's bedroom. I'm crashing at his place while I'm here in Seattle. And I'm recording this on my phone, and I'm in his closet. He's got some clothing racks that are like metal and stuff. And I'm just going to like run my fingernails along the metal for this ASMR Mike segment. Thank you so much for listening, especially if this was your first time listening, because we talked about ASMR Mike in the middle of the episode instead of at the end of the episode. I have a whole backstory, but you'll just have to go back and listen to all of the episodes to understand the ASMR Mike lore. Thank you for listening.